Greetings ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to today's Reddit series video from the subreddit HFY called The Asimov Part 7 of 8, written by Shogun CDN. Neeve was no soldier. Her heart crashed inside her as she crept through the corridors. The initial rush of adrenaline had worn off, and now she had to work hard to push her fear down. She waited as the Malnad came around the corner and swung the rifle, catching the lead soldier full in the face, dropping him as she rushed the other two, hoping to drive them into the floor with her mass. Her shoulder caught one, but the last Malnad was further away than she had expected, and a light flashed past her face as she fell on top of the second Malnad. Neeve struck out blindly with her foot and felt something give even as she pushed herself to her feet and ran away. Another flash behind her let her know that at least one of the Malnad was still alive. The high gravity would let her outrun them, but they would be looking for her now. Neeve stopped in a corridor to catch her breath, and the ship shuddered again. She was tired, and her body was starting to ache even more. She wished that she had spent more time with Zoo training back on the Asimov. She proceeded cautiously through the halls and then heard another group just as they rounded the corner. She turned and desperately sprinted away down the hall as they spotted her, racing to the junction. As she slowed down to make the turn, light splashed down the hallway and one caught her in the thigh, sending her sprawling hard into the wall. Pain exploded in her leg. She dragged herself to her feet, leaned on her rifle. She knew she couldn't outrun them anymore and looked for a place to hide. At the end of the T intersection, she pushed her way into her room. It was a crew quarters, and she took a step inside just as the door slammed open again behind her from another pulse blast. She dove behind the bed and regretted it as pain shot up through her leg again. There were 6 Malnad at the end of the hallway. They formed up halfway down the hall, training their guns on her. "Enough of this," shouted the alien in front, baring its fangs. "Put down your weapon, and perhaps we'll provide you with a merciful end. If you do not, we promise that you will feel the cold terror of pain and suffering before you die." From behind the bed, Neeve looked up at the ceiling, trying to figure out what parts of her didn't hurt. There was no other way out of the room. She tried to think of what Captain Lee might do in this situation. "Sorry to disappoint you, but I'm Canadian. You can't threaten me with the cold," she yelled out. She hoped it sounded defiant. The Asimov closed the distance with the last Malnad ship. They had not gotten the same head start as the other ship, and Lieutenant Peterson's hard docking had saved them some time. "We need that ship intact, Commander. Cannons only. Aim for the engines, and let's hope we don't hit anything too explodey. Mr. Singh, let me know immediately if Zoo's team requires our help," said Captain Lee. Commander Mathis worked the targeting controls and waited for the range indicator. As it beeped, he began firing bursts from the remaining cannon. The tracer rounds lit up the view screen as the Malnad ship desperately tried to evade the Asimov. Its own pulse cannons were returning fire, shaking the Asimov with each hit, but small explosions ripped across its stern. The Malnad ship suddenly lurched to the side, gases spewing from its stern. Lights across the ship began flickering as it listed awkwardly and began rolling over. "Nice shooting, Commander," Captain Lee said. The commander turned to flash a big grin, which seemed even whiter against the dark screen. "Captain," Peterson commented, "we don't want to take too much more of that. I'm reading hull damage in a few places, and we've got a few systems knocked offline. Those shots are starting to add up." "Acknowledged," the captain replied. He looked at the lame ship on the screen. "Commander, if you even get a sense that they are going to put up any more fight, end them." "Aye," replied Commander Mathis. "Malnad ship, this is Captain Lee of the starship Asimov. You will power down your weapons except for your life support. Any other actions will result in a destruction of your ship. There are no other terms." Seconds passed, and then a rough voice came over the comm. The Malnet do not. The rest was cut off by more explosions as Commander Mathis fired another burst from the cannon. Those seem like fighting words, sir, Mathis said, keeping his eyes on the targeting screen. Chaos could be heard over the open comm channel. Then the Malnet ship went dark as it began powering down. They had captured their prey. Their prey was trapped in a room. They had chased it through the corridors and were exhausted. His team was working hard in the high gravity, and Officer Nagan felt the heat in his armor as he panted to cool himself. The rest of the boarding crew were instructed to make their way to the position. The cowards on the Snarl had abandoned them, and now this alien was defeating his soldiers. He had felt the blood rise in him when he spotted the creature and brought it down with his rifle. As they had rounded the corner, he had expected it to be dead. Instead, it had survived the shot and had made it into the room. They had advanced cautiously, having seen the remains of their comrades in the corridors. He had offered it a quick death, but the thing just yelled at something in his translator could not interpret. As he pondered what a Canadian might be, his comm erupted with noise. "Shoot them! Where are they? I think I got one. Fall back, fall back! What are they wearing? Leave the wounded." Then, behind them, 5 Malnet soldiers lumbered around the corner in a frenzied mess. The last one in the group suddenly dropped before he could make the turn as his armor exploded out one side of his body. Officer Nagan had not seen any pulse flashes, but the walls in the corridor erupted in fragments. "They're coming!" one of the soldiers screamed as he crashed into the Officer Nagan's group. He slapped the coward and pushed him aside. "Form up when they come around that corner. Kill them!" Officer Nagan ordered. The soldiers fell back on their training and formed a defensive line. Officer Nagan could hear the labored panting over his comms and thought that he could smell the fear. He had never seen his soldiers like this before. They were acting like raw conscripts. They had boarded the ship expecting to face a small crew of cowardly Rottler. Then they encountered a giant alien, and now something had managed to frighten his soldiers. They were not prepared for this. What had these Rottler found? An armored limb appeared briefly down the hallway, and 2 small canisters skittered down the corridor. The Malnet soldiers scrambled over each other to avoid the unknown weapon. Officer Nagan roared at them to find cover, but just as he uttered the command, his world blinked out in a white flash, and he could no longer hear anything except a hazy ringing sound. He fired blindly down the hall in rage, hoping to hit the back of the enemy. A sharp, sudden pain erupted in his chest, and he fell to the ground, dropping his rifle. As the seconds passed, his vision started to return, and he heard loud, muffled cracks through his impaired hearing. Dazed, he looked around at his soldiers, dead or dying around him as the room continued to spin. Finally, the noises stopped, and he saw the blurry images of the enemy approaching. An armored boot kicked away his rifle. Officer Nagan could only pant heavily as the taste of blood filled his maw. Zoo watched the alien rifle skitter away as she kept an eye on the injured alien. "This one's still breathing," Toby said over the comm. "Check him for weapons, but otherwise leave him. He's not our priority," Zoo replied with no emotion. This was something Zoo would admit to be very few people. She actually enjoyed this part of the job, seeing her enemies defeated. She never harbored any sympathy for anyone that chose to take up arms to fight against her. Looking at the Malnet panting rapidly and bleeding from its wounds, she silently wished it a slow death. She turned her attention to the end of the hallway where Neeve was struggling to get to her feet. "Secure the area. Warner, we're on level 2. We found Neeve. We have 12 bad guys down. What's your status?" she said. "We found the Rother and Engineering. First Hethek and Barrow are still missing. Chalk up 3 space wolves for us. Mathers took a hit because stupidity, but he'll recover," Warner replied. Shut up, Warner. No one told me we were fighting hairy alien dwarves, Mathers calmed. Save it for later. Lock down there and hold that position until further notice, she said. Zoo! Neeve yelled as she reached the room. I thought you were dead. Burst-Headed said you were gone. I thought he meant... We had to cut loose so that we could fight, but you know we'd never leave you. By the way, the gravity was that you? Zoo asked. Neeve nodded. Good thinking. I noticed it shortly after we boarded. The Melnard looked like they were walking through water. We spotted a group running somewhere in a hurry. They led us right here. Zoo helped Neeve sit on the bed. Are you hurt badly? I don't think anything's broken. It's just really painful, Neeve replied, clutching Zoo tightly to her. Dr. Chan will fix you right up. Barrow, we need to get Dr. Chan here. She's hurt. She's lost a lot of blood, Neeve said. I'll relay that to the ship. Where is she? They're in a control room on this level. I'll have to show you. I can walk if you help me, Neeve said, struggling to get up. Easy now. Day team, we've got an escort mission now. Give me a perimeter for our package here. First person to let anything through scrubs the outside of the ship for a month. Let's move, Zoo said. Can you move it? Dr. Chan asked as he held Neve's leg. Only if I say ow, 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 she replied through gritted teeth. First Hetek looked down with concern. He had seen his crew and wanted to make sure the brave human that saved them was safe. They were currently back in Bay 2, where the humans had set up their equipment. Warner stood guard near them. They had swept the ship multiple times, but remained vigilant in case the Melnard had gone into hiding. In total, 18 Melnard were found. One was smart enough to surrender, and the rest were taken out without much trouble. They were simply overmatched by armored humans in a high gravity. I think you're going to be limping for a bit, but otherwise no permanent damage. You were lucky it just grazed you, otherwise you may have shattered your pelvis. You're going to need to take it easy for a bit, Dr. Chan said. How's Barrow? Neeve asked. She's stable as far as I can tell. You can see her again once I'm done here. The gash was ugly, but once we got it bleeding to stop, I stitched her up. I don't know if the Rothler scar like we do, but if they do, she's going to have a pretty good one to tell her friends stories about, Dr. Chan replied. I need to see her, Neeve said. You will, but Neeve, we have another problem. You were exposed to them and the Melnard without your suit. I don't know what's going to happen to you, or to them. You're going to have to stay here for a while until we can get the full diagnostic run. And then you're still going to have to go through some pretty unpleasant decontamination procedures, followed by a quarantine before you can come back on board the Asimov, I'm afraid, Dr. Chan said. First Hetek looked at the doctor, puzzled. Doctor, is that why you wear your suits? We thought it was simply a custom of your species, or perhaps because you found our atmosphere inhospitable. We do not think that you have anything to worry about. We carry the standard biological inhibitors on board. All Rothler have them. What do you mean? Dr. Chan asked. Our people and every other species are able to freely mix, as long as our environments permit us using the inhibitors. They protect us from foreign elements once programmed with the host species library of known bacteria and viruses. It's a very old technology, First Hetek said. I'm going to need you to get me a few of those devices, but it's going to take some time before we can use it. We'll get the R&D guys and put a rush on it. But until then, Neeve, this is your home, Dr. Chan said, picking up his equipment. Warner walked closer to Neeve. Listen, Neeve, no offense, but when you come back to the ship, if you give me space measles or something that causes any part I need to fall off my body, we're gonna have words. And just to be clear, I need all the parts I currently have. Neeve aimed a kick at his armored leg and immediately regretted her choice of leg to kick with. Barrow looked up at Neeve. She had never seen her outside her suit before. The fur on her head was long and tied up behind her head. It was hard to believe that this one human had been able to hold off all the Melnard. She had no fangs or claws, and Vera was told that she did it without any weapons except a rifle that she had to use as a club. "Neeve, you did not tell me you were a warrior," Vera said. "I am not. Zoo and Warner are. I take care of navigation," Neeve replied. They were in the First Hetic's quarters, and the extra space had given the doctor more room to work, and First Hetic had insisted upon it. "But I heard what happened. How could you do that to the Melnid if you are not a warrior?" Varro asked. "High gravity and the right motivation, I guess," Neeve replied, holding Varro's paw. Varro felt the human skin. It was softer than she had imagined, and held her paw gently, and yet these same hands had killed Melnid. "Why were you not afraid, Neeve? Do humans not feel fear? Is that why humans are so good at war?" Varro asked. "Of course we feel fear. I was very afraid, at least until I saw Zoo. But I was more afraid of what would happen to you," Neeve replied. Varro considered her new friend. She could stand against Melnid despite being afraid. She ate the flesh of other animals and yet sacrificed herself to save Rothla she barely knew. These humans were going to change the galaxy, she thought to herself. End of chapter. And that, my friends, concludes this dose of science fiction fun. I hope that you enjoyed. And if you did, please don't forget to support the author from the link down below. But if you want to support this channel, there are links as well down below for you to help with. But the easiest way would be to share this video. And if you are so inclined, subscribe as well. I will see you all in the next episode, and I hope that you all have a fantastic time until then. Cheers.